All right, welcome everyone. We all know that helping our clients evaluate their automatic thoughts is really a cornerstone of our work in CBT. But the question is, how do we get really good at it? In this session, we're going to break down the clinical skill of challenging thoughts, moving from the fundamentals to the nuances that honestly make all the difference in a session. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll talk about how to select the single most impactful thought to work on. Then we'll dive deep into the art of Socratic questioning. We'll also cover what to do when things get stuck, how to handle thoughts that are undeniably true, and, maybe most importantly, how to teach this skill so our clients can use it for the rest of their lives. Okay, first things first, our clients have, thousands of thoughts a day? Our job isn't to tackle all of them, no way. It's to strategically select the one that holds the most emotional weight in that particular moment. So let's look at an example to make this real. Meet Sally. She's a student, and she's feeling completely overwhelmed in class. And this thought pops into her head: I'll never make it here. This is a perfect example of what we call a hot thought. It's just charged with emotion, feels incredibly true in the moment, and it causes immediate distress. This is exactly the kind of thought we want to work with. So how do we know we've actually found a key thought? Well, I tend to ask myself 3 questions. 1, is it causing them pain right now? 2, is it getting in the way of their life or their goals? And 3, is this a thought that keeps coming back again and again? If the answer is yes to these, then we know we found our starting point. Now let's contrast that with another thought Sally had about the library system being inefficient. Yeah, sure, it was annoying, but she solved the problem and she moved on. But that thought, I'll never make it, that didn't just fade away. It stuck around, carrying all that emotional weight, all that belief. That's the difference between a fleeting frustration and a key thought that we really need to address in our work. But of course, clinical wisdom also means knowing when to hit the brakes. If the therapeutic alliance feels a little shaky, or if the client is just too overwhelmed to think clearly, or heck, if we're running out of time in the session, we have to postpone. Sometimes the most therapeutic thing we can do is focus on something else entirely. Now for the fun part. Let's get into our core technique. This is all built on the idea of collaborative empiricism, and this is so crucial. We are not lawyers cross-examining a witness here. We're more like 2 scientists side by side looking at the data of the thought with some genuine curiosity. The magic of Socratic questioning is that it empowers the client to evaluate their own thinking. Our job is just to guide them, to help them see all the evidence, both for and against the thought. This is not about pushing them to think positive. It's really about helping them arrive at a more balanced, a more realistic perspective, all on their own. Think of this as your Socratic toolkit, 6 different paths we can take to explore a thought. We might start by examining the evidence, like a detective, or we could brainstorm alternative explanations to get them unstuck from that one negative viewpoint. We could even decatastrophize by looking at the worst-case scenario and building a coping plan. We've never used all of them at once, but having these tools ready to go is our core strategy. So here's how this plays out in a session. Sally says, Karen doesn't care about me. Now, the therapist's first move is to validate that feeling, right? Explore why she thinks that. Then they can gently ask something like this, which just opens the door to look at the other side of the story. And the next step is to break the grip of that single, painful interpretation. So we ask, could there be any other reason Karen was so rushed? Maybe she was late for class. It seems like such a simple question, but it's incredibly powerful. It shifts the client's mind from a place of certainty to a place of possibility. The decatastrophizing question. We ask about the worst-case scenario. For Sally, it was that her friend truly didn't like her. But then comes the crucial follow-up, and how would you cope? And Sally realized that while, it would be painful, she had other friends. She would be okay. And the result of all this? After walking through these questions, Sally's belief in that thought, Karen doesn't care, dropped from 90% all the way down to 20%. And as that belief faded, so did the sadness. That's the direct link we're always looking for, the shift in thinking that leads to a shift in feeling. But let's be real, sometimes it doesn't work. We go through the questions and the client's belief in the thought barely budges. This is a moment every single one of us experiences. So what do we do when we're stuck? Let's pull up a little troubleshooting guide. So when a thought evaluation stalls, I mentally run through this checklist. Did I miss a more powerful underlying thought or image? Or maybe was my questioning too superficial? It's also really critical to ask, did I truly validate all the evidence for the thought before we started looking for alternatives? So often, the issue is that we're dealing with something deeper, like a core belief or that classic head versus heart problem. Let's focus on that last one for a second. This is when a client says something like, I get it in my head, but I just don't feel it in my gut. This is almost always a sign that there's a deeper, unarticulated belief or assumption that we need to gently uncover and start to explore.
Okay, now we need to talk about one of the most important pivots in this entire line of work. What do you do when the automatic thought is actually, well, true?
At this moment, our goal has to change. We stop questioning if the thought is valid because we've established that it is. Our focus has to shift from challenging the thought itself to dealing with the reality that it represents. And we have 3 primary strategies here. First, can we engage in some problem solving? Second, can we investigate the meaning that the client is drawing from this true thought? And third, if the problem really can't be solved, can we start to work toward acceptance? The strategy of investigating the conclusion is just so key. For example, the thought, "I hurt my friend's feelings," might be completely 100% true. But the conclusion the client draws, "Therefore I'm a terrible person," is a huge and often invalid leap. Our job is to help them separate that painful fact from the destructive meaning they've attached to it. Okay, this brings us to our final and maybe our most important topic. Everything we've done so far is a skill, and our ultimate goal is to hand that skill over to our clients so they can use it long after therapy ends. So when we assign this as homework, we have to frame it as a no-lose proposition. Using this kind of language is key. It tells the client, look, either you'll succeed and feel better, or you'll struggle, which actually provides perfect material for our next session. It just removes all the pressure to be perfect. And this is it. This is the ultimate goal of the entire process. We teach them how to identify, question, and respond to their own thinking, so that eventually they don't need us anymore. We are actively, purposefully working to make ourselves obsolete. So I'll leave you with this question to take into your next session. When that next hot thought comes up, ask yourself, how can I not only help my client through this one single moment, but also teach them the tools to navigate their own mind with skill, with curiosity, and with self-compassion for years and years to come?